This little monster is trying to eat all my wires. It's trying to eat my microphone wire. Hello, I'm Sarah, the Skeptical Witch, and welcome back to my channel. This is a place where I like to discuss things like skeptical witchcraft, the psychology of magic, and religious studies. So today I am doing a video on the law of attraction, and this is something that I've been thinking about doing a video on for a little while, simply because it is such a huge part of contemporary spirituality today, like alternative spirituality. It relates to witchcraft in a lot of ways because it has to do with setting intent and kind of seeing that intent manifest in the world. So it has kind of an overlap with more mainstream forms of contemporary witchcraft there. And it's just an interesting topic that I really want to kind of dive into. So I want to touch on some of the roots of the law of attraction here, what it is, as well as some issues with the law of attraction, and kind of also what the law of attraction gets right. Because, well, I do think that a lot of kind of the thinking that goes along with the law of attraction is kind of problematic and can even be toxic. There are some things that it does get right, like positive thinking, and some things that I do use in my own like witchcraft spiritual practice. So the law of attraction is basically the idea that our thoughts can transform or create reality in profound and meaningful ways, and often in very tangible ways. And it's very much based on the idea that like attracts like. So if you have positive thoughts, then you will be able to manifest, positive things in your life. If you have negative thoughts, then you'll be manifesting negative things in your life. But it's also the idea that we can manifest certain tangible things in our lives through the power of our thoughts. So for example, if we think about wanting a dream car or a dream house or like a perfect relationship or something, if we focus on these thoughts and put them out into the universe will then bring that back to us, right? So it's not just like attracting like in terms of kind of like positive or negative energies or feelings or whatever. It can also be about actually manifesting tangible, concrete things in our lives. It's tied to this contemporary metaphysical religion where everything is seen to be energy, and energy vibrates at particular frequencies, and in so doing, it creates the illusion of mass. So from this perspective, lower vibrating energies are associated with mass and matter, and higher vibrating energies are associated with spirituality and kind of higher truths of the universe. So there's this idea within this form of spirituality that if you are vibrating at a higher frequency, you're more in tune with like your spiritual self, your higher self, more in tune with kind of the universe or cosmic oneness. Whereas if you're vibrating at a lower frequency or you have a lower energy, you're kind of more stuck within the like material world and you are less spiritual. So the law of attraction and the kind of spirituality that it is rooted in today is really based on the like science or pseudoscience of vibrational energies and things like this. And it is kind of based on the idea that mind and matter are both energetic in the end, so they can have an influence on one another. So there is some scientific truth to this in terms of like vibrational frequencies and energies and things and energy fields and magnetic fields and kind of all of that the law of attraction gets into. But there are definitely debates as to whether, it can actually be applied in this way that spiritual practitioners are using it. For many spiritual practitioners, metaphysics is seen as being beyond or superior to physics in the sense that it's not limited by the same scientific methods. So it doesn't have to rely on kind of that empirical research. It doesn't have to rely on that kind of scientific method form of testing, because it's more about feeling the truth and feeling what's right and kind of feeling that higher connection to the universe and things like that. So this kind of spirituality is highly influenced by science, and it does use a lot of its terms and things, but it uses it in a different way. It's kind of a religious perspective on these things and a religious application of these things rather than actual kind of empirical science. So while the law of attraction does involve some scientific theories like Einstein's theory of relativity, for example, it's more about like intuition and feeling rather than intellect or reason or rationality necessarily. And I don't think that's always a bad thing necessarily, but I think it's just important to keep in mind that, it is using scientific terms in a different way than the discipline that these terms actually come from. So while we do know that there is a very strong connection between mind and body, for example, there is that strong tie between mind and matter in that sense, like, our thoughts impact our body in pretty profound ways, and our bodies, impact how we think. Some spiritual practitioners who use the law of attraction also think that, our minds can impact material reality around us beyond the body in very kind of profound ways. And this is something that's seen in witchcraft as well. This idea that thought can alter reality. And this is kind of where contemporary science takes issue with the law of attraction. So within contemporary spirituality today, the law of attraction is often made out to be like this ancient perennial wisdom that's been around for all time. And while there may be some elements of this idea of the law of attraction in kind of cultures throughout history, it is also very historically specific in its origins, and it comes from a very specific time in American history. And this is in the New Thought movement of the 19th century. So this was a movement that was very much about mind over matter. It was the idea that, we can control our minds in order to control our reality. It was very much focused on like healing and health and the body, and the idea that the mind has the power to heal and transform the physical body. So New Thought comes out of 19th century religious liberalism in America, and this was a movement that incorporated a lot of diverse religious traditions that were very much about rebelling against traditional religious authority. They wanted to move away from authoritarian, hierarchical kind of versions of Protestant Christianity and move into a more liberated, like individualized kind of religious movement. Religious liberalism really valued mysticism. It valued kind of direct experiences with the divine, encounters with divinity that were not mediated by like a priest necessarily. It was more about like that individual connection with God or spirit or whatever it was. And New Thought in particular was very much influenced by transcendentalism. So this was also a 19th century movement that was started by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It was very much about like things like solitude, mysticism, meditation, the immanence of the divine, especially the immanence of the divine in nature. And New Thought was also tied to Christianity in certain ways. So even though not all practitioners of New Thought were Christians, a lot of them were. It was originated by Phineas P. Quimby, who was a hypnotist or mesmerist, and he was someone who combined like Christianity, especially the teachings of Christ, with Emerson's philosophy. And he in particular thought that he had kind of rediscovered Jesus's ability to heal. So he was very much about like healing through thought and the power of the mind to heal the body. So New Thought is very much rooted in the idea that like poor health comes from bad thoughts, essentially. So by changing your thoughts, you can change your health. You can change the state of your body. And New Thought was very influential in creating kind of America's therapeutic tradition in spirituality. So it was very much about like self-improvement, self-help. It really kind of started the whole like visualization craze, as well as positive affirmations. These really kind of come out of New Thought. And it was very much about improving the self, disciplining the mind through meditation, and taking care of the self and the body through having positive and good thoughts. So you can really see that kind of overlap with the law of attraction there. Increasingly though, movements that can trace their like historical roots to New Thought, we're seeing less of an emphasis necessarily on like disciplining of the mind and like really taking care of the self. And instead it's becoming much more about like wealth and success and manifesting these like tangible things in one's life. It's less about kind of inner healing and inner peace and more about individualistic material success. And we can really see this in the way that New Thought influenced the prosperity gospel, or like prosperity theology, that comes out of Protestant Christianity. So this is a form of Pentecostalism that comes out of post-World War II America, and it really started with Oral Roberts. He's kind of generally seen to be the like father of the prosperity gospel. He was a televangelist, and he was really seen as getting this movement off the ground that brings faith and capitalism together. So two things that America is definitely known for. It's a movement that is very much about like health and wealth. It's often called like the health and wealth kind of movement. And it's based on the idea that if you have faith in God, especially the right kind of faith in God, that often involves generous donations to the church, then you will have health, you will have material success, because God wants you to be rich. So if you're doing the right things and doing what God wants you to do, then you will be rich. You will have untold wealth, because that's what God wants for you, is basically the idea behind this movement. It's charismatic, it's evangelical, it's especially popular in the American South, and it is kind of associated with those disgustingly rich pastors. So I don't know, you hear about them sometimes, like these pastors with their, you know, mansions and private jet planes, who make a ton of money off their congregants, because they are people who believe that if they're praying right, if they're donating to the church, then they too can be rich like this. And it's seen as being overall a good thing to be disgustingly wealthy. Along with New Thought, the prosperity gospel is also very much associated with like the Protestant work ethic and the American dream. So the idea that if you work really hard, you know, you can make the life that you want for yourself. So it's basically based on this idea that, you know, if you have faith and or if you work hard, then God will give you what you want, what you deserve, essentially. And if you don't get what you want, if you aren't wealthy, if you aren't healthy, then you're doing something wrong and it's your fault. This then kind of brings me to some of the issues that I see with the law of attraction, and some of the reasons why I think it can be kind of a toxic outlook to have. So in preparation for making this video, I actually watched the documentary The Secret, which is based on the book of the same name by Rhonda Byrne, and it basically talks about like the kind of ancient secret of the law of attraction and how you yes and how you can kind of, you know, manifest anything and you want in your life using the law of attraction. And I would only recommend watching it if you want to cringe and be frustrated. I also read an ethnography called Ripples of the Universe by Susanna Crockford, and this is kind of an anthropological study of contemporary spirituality today. So she goes into a community in Sedona, Arizona, and she talks to a lot of spiritual practitioners who very much believe in the law of attraction. It's like very central to their lives. Manifesting is a big part of their lives. And what's really interesting about this ethnography is how Crockford really frames this idea of contemporary energy-based spirituality as a product of American society and as a product of various issues within American society. So for instance, the increasing wealth gap and the loss of the middle class and the difficulty in finding jobs stability today, especially in the gig economy. And I thought it was really interesting how someone in the Secret documentary refers to the fact that 1% of the world's population holds most of its wealth as being a product of the law of attraction, and really talks about this as like a good thing that we should kind of all be working towards. You know, we should be working towards being disgustingly rich, and the people who are disgustingly rich have done so because they use the law of attraction, and really just completely ignoring like all the problems that come with this, all of the like systemic inequalities in America and the rest of the world. And it just kind of like boggled my mind how unaware everyone in the documentary was of this. Just completely ignoring like economic problems, racial inequalities, continued marginalization of certain groups, or like the lingering effects of colonization, or issues with the lack of universal health care in America, or unfair immigration policies, or cycles of trauma that continue within families and communities, just completely ignoring all of this. There are so many issues with our various systems in the Western world, and yet the secret says that you can just kind of escape all of this using the law of attraction. Like, you can escape poverty, you can escape cycles of trauma if only you think positively and will these things into your life, right? And sure, some people do, some people can do that, and that's absolutely fantastic. And I think that, you know, it's great to hear success stories of when that does happen and when people overcome tremendous obstacles in their lives. But talking only about success stories like this, it kind of erases and silences the voices of all those people who have struggled more, who can't just think about something and, you know, have their lives radically be changed because of these systematic inequalities that they continue to face on a daily basis. And this is partially what Crockford gets into in her ethnography as well. So she talks about how like this pervasive idea of the American dream has really limited people's ability to even like discuss racial or class inequalities and things like this. And it makes it hard to think about how these things actually affect people's lives, because there's this mentality of, you know, if you work hard at something, if you really put your mind to it, you can do it. You can overcome all obstacles, you can overcome all challenges if you just work really hard. And it just completely places the onus of everything on the individual and doesn't get into the underlying systemic problems. The law of attraction really says, like, if you can't get what you want as an individual, then it's your fault. You're doing something wrong. You are not manifesting correctly. You are not in tune with your, you know, higher spiritual self or something. Something that you are doing is wrong, and it completely ignores everything underlying that. And this is where I think the law of attraction can really become toxic and can become very much about victim blaming. And, you know, it even kind of erases the very idea of class, because if everything is energy, if difference is an illusion, then there's no way to like talk about class differences and things like this. Also, within contemporary spirituality, there's like this weird tension between this individual responsibility on the one hand and then divine providence on the other hand. So like the plan that the universe has set out for people. So Crockford talks about how a lot of the people that she connected with in the spiritual community, they would often frame their like negative experiences as positive ones, because they wanted to see it as being kind of part of the plan of the universe, and they wanted to see things as being the way things were meant to work out for them, right? So if they were in bad situations, if they were experiencing poverty, then they would frame that as being what's meant to be, right? It's just part of the universe's plan for me. And this is a way of like coping with negative experiences on the one hand, but it can also lead to like an internalization of blame and kind of internalizing blame for oneself for what are actually sometimes systemic problems and problems with kind of the capitalist system in general. Because there's this like taboo of failure in Western society, these negative life experiences are rewritten as positive ones. And while that can be helpful for people, it can also be problematic and can also lead to not wanting to change things necessarily. Also thinking about things in terms of mental health, for instance, you know, sometimes it's not that easy to just think positively and to just change one's outlook. Like, as someone who has struggled with mental health issues before, I hate it when people tell me just to like be happy, like it's that easy, because sometimes it's more difficult than like just looking at pictures of a cute baby or like listening to some good music. Those things can help, but sometimes the change needs to be more radical and more in-depth than that, and takes more time than that. And I think that, blaming people for poor mental health, blaming someone for potentially crippling depression is super, super toxic and problematic. Another issue with the law of attraction, at least the way that it's kind of framed in The Secret, is that there's no incentive to actually act on what you want. There's no incentive to actually put a plan in place towards getting what you want, because it's very much like a quick fix kind of mentality. It's very much like just placing your order with the universe, as someone said in the documentary. It's just placing your order with the universe, like you're online shopping or something. You just say, I want this, I want this, I want this, and the universe will supposedly give it to you, as long as you're, vibrating on the higher frequency, or the frequency of what it is you want. There's no guide towards actually working towards what it is you want. And I see this in contemporary witchcraft a lot as well. Like on some of my videos, like my witchcraft for student videos, for example, I'll sometimes get comments from people being like, what's a spell that I can use to do well on this exam? Or how can I not study but still do well? And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but there is no just spell that can help you do that. You have to put in the work, and the law of attraction doesn't really get at that. So now that I've touched on some of what I think are the issues with the law of attraction, I do want to say that what I do think the law of attraction kind of gets right is the cultivation of positive thinking, is the cultivation of joy in one's life, of happiness. These things I think are great about the law of attraction, and I think can be beneficial in anyone's life, really. And I do genuinely think that, your mood, your vibe, how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis, I do think that really can have an impact on your life in very tangible ways. It can impact your success. It can impact your health. It can impact, your overall happiness and well-being. And I think that trying to have a positive outlook can be a good thing. Just not in the way that the law of attraction says it happens, right? So the law of attraction is very much about using vibrational energies and frequencies to bring good vibes or certain things into one's life. It's using this kind of quantum physics pseudoscience. And while there are a couple of physicists in the law of attraction documentary, like Alan Fred Wolf, I think is one of them, I'm not necessarily convinced by what they're saying, if they're actually applying physics in a way that is kind of sound science. But again, I am not a physicist. I barely passed the lowest level of high school math, so I do not want to touch any of that. I tried to look up some of this Fred Alan Wolf guy's research, and it was just all completely over my head, so I'm not even going to try to go there to kind of unpick whatever is going on here with this science, so-called science of the law of attraction. But I do know that most scientists do not think that it is sound science. So that being said, I don't think that the law of attraction works in the way that it says it does, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't work at all. Also, as I've discussed on this channel before, it's important not to treat science as dogma and to think that things can't change. I don't think it's necessarily impossible that, we'll learn that maybe everything the law of attraction is saying is correct and right and totally true. And that could happen. I don't necessarily think it will, but I just think it's important not to be completely closed-minded about these things as well. That said, though, what we do know right now is that there is considerable research backing the benefits of positive thinking. So we can see this in positive psychology today. Positive psychology is not just about attaining material success, but actually about changing your outlook on things. So changing the way you view your experiences and yourself. It's about using tools like visualization and gratitude and affirmations, things that are also connected to the law of attraction. And there is some overlap with the law of attraction, but it's not in the sense of, being explained by these like vibrational frequencies and things. It's more about how you see things and your attitude and your outlook. These can really impact and change your actions, which can in turn change your reality. It goes to show that thoughts are powerful, just not in the same way that the law of attraction kind of makes them out to be. It's about really doing that deep inner transformative work to change your disposition, your way of moving through the world, to change how you see things in order to change your reality. Positive psychology emphasizes the interconnectedness of mind and body, so the way that positive emotions can actually change bodily states and can actually affect health. So it's been known that, reducing stress and anxiety using positive thinking techniques can actually help boost the immune system. And there have also been studies done that show that smiling releases endorphins. So that can reduce stress, and that can make you less anxious and just kind of happier in life. Studies also show that how you move through the world can really influence your mental state. So for example, if you are someone who is like always hunched over and really tight and like kind of shy, your emotions will reflect that, and you might be more anxious and things. Whereas if you are someone who moves through the world with very like strong, confident body postures, you're more likely to have that confidence in yourself, and that will affect the decisions that you make in your life, and that will affect how you relate to people, and it will affect all sorts of things like that then have an impact on your reality. But this doesn't mean that like positive thinking is automatically going to lead to health and wellness, right? So it's not like that one-to-one automatic kind of relationship. Instead, positive thinking makes living a happier, healthier life more likely. Studies have also shown that cultivating these positive emotions can also help improve people's work lives, people's relationships, everything like this. So if you're a happy person, you're more likely to make better decisions. You're more likely to not engage in self-destructive behaviors like smoking or like drinking excessively or things like this. And you're more likely to just make overall better decisions that are more likely to improve your life. Also, if you're someone who's able to think positively, then you're more able to deal with like inconveniences and hardships in your life than someone who isn't, right? If you have like an optimistic outlook, then you're more likely to be able to take the negative things in stride than if you have kind of a negative outlook and you're just kind of always expecting negative things to happen to you. And this is also tied to like confirmation bias as well. So if you're using the law of attraction, say, and you're expecting good things to come into your life, then you're going to notice the good things more. Whereas if you're just kind of negative all the time and you're just having, you always think, oh, poor me, why does this always happen to me? Then you're going to notice the bad things more. Like that's just how our minds kind of work. We notice what we expect. Also, studies have shown that positive thinking can help you improve your like natural skills and abilities at certain things because it can increase confidence. So if you're feeling more confident about something, if you feel like you can do it, like you're going into, a hard exam or a sports game or something, thinking that you can do it, and you have that confidence in yourself, you're more likely to actually be able to act in correspondence with those thoughts. Whereas if you're lacking that confidence, if you don't think you can do it, you're more likely to not be able to do it. So in this sense, that positive outlook and positive thinking, it can really transform your reality. And what happens in your life, it can really be in alignment with your thoughts in that sense. Just again, not exactly in the way that the law of attraction explains that these things happen. It's not about like energies and vibrational frequencies necessarily. It's about attitude and how you see things and your perspective. That said, though, interestingly, the law of attraction can actually play an important role in cultivating these happy thoughts and these positive feelings. So there was one study that I looked at where they had a group of people in comparison to like a test group who were going into the experiment not knowing anything about the law of attraction, and after I forget how long it was, like a week-long course or something on the law of attraction, learning about the law of attraction, how to apply it in their lives, and after using these kind of principles and teaching, they were much happier than before. So by practicing things like positive thinking and gratitude and visualizations and thinking about manifesting the lives that they wanted, they were actually happier because of that. So the law of attraction can help cultivate a sense of well-being and happiness in one's life. And this can be the case even if you don't necessarily believe in the law of attraction as it's kind of explained within that energetic paradigm. Even if you don't necessarily believe that my vibrational frequencies are gonna manifest what it is that I desire, I can still use the kind of the teachings of the law of attraction in my life to cultivate these positive feelings. And I can do this through a suspension of disbelief. So even if I don't rationally believe in it, I can suspend my disbelief and act as if the law of attraction is real. I can act as if I can actually manifest these things in my life. I can act as if in order to be happier and to increase my overall well-being. So even if the science of the law of attraction may be faulty, that doesn't mean that it's not useful and that we can't make something out of it and still use it. As long as we don't start like obsessing over the things that we want, and as long as we kind of recognize some of those more toxic elements of the law of attraction. I think it's also important to note that like positive thinking doesn't completely ignore or disregard negative feelings. Like it's not just about being completely positive all the time. Instead, it kind of stresses the importance of dealing with those negative feelings in healthy ways. Whereas the law of attraction, at least as it's represented in things like The Secret, negative thoughts are seen as something that should just be pushed away entirely and not dealt with, because if you think negative things, you will bring negative things into your life. And that, I think, is toxic. It can be like spiritual bypassing in a sense, and it can be just, not dealing with the actual reality of things, and that can be super problematic. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on the law of attraction and witchcraft, especially kind of my skeptical approach to witchcraft. So I don't necessarily use like the law of attraction necessarily in my practice, but I do use positive thinking, because I think for me, witchcraft is very much about psychology. It's very much about kind of changing my attitude in order to transform how I then act in response to certain things. So for me, a lot of my spells are really based around changing how I think about things, changing how I see things, changing my perspective essentially. So for example, I will often do spells to boost my confidence. So before my exams, my like general comprehensive exams that I had recently, I did a spell to help me kind of gain confidence going into them. So I used various like positive affirmations within that, like I'm smart, I will do well, I'm not gonna fail, things like that, in order to kind of help me feel as best as I could going into it. And that's kind of central to a lot of my witchcraft practice, is that positive thinking and that transformation of thoughts. It's connected to the placebo effect and the idea of like an open label placebo. So if you believe that something is going to help you with whatever it is you're trying to do, then it's more likely to actually do that, and it can improve the way that you act in response to certain things. So that spell that I did was not actually about like making me pass the exam, but instead it was about helping me believe that I could pass and helping me have the confidence that I could do well, so that I could then perform to the best of my abilities. So with that, I'm gonna end this video here. Hopefully it's not too long. I don't know how much I rambled in this one, but as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your support, your comments, everything. I love, reading your comments and stuff, so I'd be really interested to know, like, what are your thoughts on the law of attraction? Do you kind of use manifestation in your witchcraft or practice or whatever? How do you do it? How do you see it? I'm curious to know what your thoughts on this are. And I'd also love to hear for you suggestions and ideas for upcoming videos as well, what you kind of want me to talk about, anything that you, would like to see a video on, really. I'm really excited because I am planning to do some like interviews with people on my channel, some people within the like skeptical, non-theistic, witchcraft, spiritual kind of community. So I'm super excited for that. And yeah, other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thanks again for watching, and I hope that you have an absolutely wonderful and magical day. Bye.